Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube review of the Samsung S95F TV. This is Samsung flagship QD-OLED for 2025 and it comes with some serious upgrades. Let's break down everything you need to know from its specs to its gaming browse. Before we get into the gaming review, let's address the two elephants in the room, and that is the matte coating and the One Connect box. Let's start off with the matte coating. The OLED glare-free 2.0 in the Samsung S95F is one of the most talked about features. While it's excellent at diffusing reflection, used in a very bright room with a very strong direct light source will create a hazy reflection that will significantly reduce the bunch of black and contrast, and will turn your fancy $3,000 QD-OLED TV into an ugly LCD screen. Matte coatings simply do not belong to OLED. However, used in a dark room, I don't see any difference between the matte coating and a glossy screen. But where you're gonna notice a difference if you are gonna use this TV as a monitor and sit too close to it. Even in a dark room, there will be a bit loss of clarity and depth. As for the One Connect box, it's extremely finicky when it comes to the type of HDMI connection that you want to use and the quality of the cable. For example, running your HDMI connection through an AV receiver might cause a signal dropout issues, as well as using an uncertified HDMI cable will also cause some signal dropout. So make sure that you are using a high quality HDMI cable and that you are running it directly from the One Connect box to your TV. Thanks to the QD-OLED panel, the picture quality is outstanding. The S95F delivers true inky blacks and perfect contrast. The high peak brightness and excellent color volume mean that HDR and HDR10 Plus games truly pop with dazzling highlight and rich vibrant colors that can look almost too strong in some cases. It's a fantastic TV for gaming. For SDR gaming, this is one of the most impressive TVs I have ever seen, boosting up to 1000 nit of peak brightness in a 10% window. If you don't know any better, you might think that you are running an HDR game. This is how impressive it is in SDR. One of the most impressive gaming features on this TV is Samsung Motion Plus for console. This is literally a game changer if you are a console gamer. This is equivalent to a frame generation, but for console. However, you should know that this only works at 60 Hz signal, working in both 30 FPS and 60 FPS. If you are running a game at 120 FPS, it will be grayed out. The Samsung S95F can automatically detect a game console that support ALLM, such as the next generation consoles and Windows 11, and switch to game mode. However, if you have a console that does not support ALLM, like PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, or even Windows 10, then the S95F will not detect it and you have to manually select game mode. Moving into HDR gaming, the Samsung S95F measures 2400 nit in a 10% window. However, this does not translate to real-life content. In real-life content, it can only manage 1960 nit, which makes it 400 nit less than the LG G5, which can still maintain 2400 nit even in real-life content. The Samsung S95F does not officially support HDIG, but it has some form of HDIG support by setting game HDR to pacing. Compared to the LG G5, the G5 has a much better HDIG support as well as much better image tuning when it comes to HDIG. However, where the Samsung S95F pulls ahead of the LG G5 is when it comes to the game that venture into the peaky 2020 color space. The Samsung S95F will have significantly more color vibrancy and color brightness in HDR. And where the Samsung S95F also pulls ahead of the LG G5 is when using dynamic tone mapping. When using dynamic tone mapping, both of these TV revert to the 4000 nit tone curve. And because the LG G5, even though it used the latest tandem RGB panel, it's still a WOLED, which means when it gets significantly bright, its color tend to lose saturation and vibrancy. However, This is not an issue on the Samsung S95F. Because the S95F uses a true RGB panel, no matter how bright it gets, it never loses its color saturation and brightness. This TV has a major software issue when it comes to color space setting. Sometimes it does not detect the correct color space for the contact plate, and I found myself having to change it manually to normal or native, or sometimes to even custom color space. On PC, the Samsung S95F support up to 165Hz of refresh rate. It supports all the VRR flavor, the normal VRR from HDMI 2.1, FreeSync Premium Pro, and it is G-Sync compatible. On paper, it's supposed to be one of the best TV for PC gaming, if it didn't have issues. The first one is the VRR flicker. Now this is a common issue on OLED screens. However, it varies from one panel to another. On LG OLED, the only time when I notice the VRR flicker is when I pause the game and I go through the menu settings. But on QD-OLED, specifically the Samsung S95F, it is atrocious. As you can see here, it is extremely noticeable and it's distracting. However, you can mitigate this issue by locking your frame rate. It will reduce it significantly but will not get rid of it. If you want to completely get rid of this issue, you have to change the minimum VRR range to the half of the refresh rate of your screen using a third-party software called CRU Utility. Now the second issue is when you are running at 165Hz. You are going to notice some blue flashing artifacts on the screen. And the only way you can get rid of it is by disabling G-Sync or reducing the refresh rate of your screen to 120Hz. Now, should you buy the Samsung S95F for gaming? If you are going to use it in a well-lit room or in a dark room exclusively, then yes, 100%. The Samsung S95F is a gaming powerhouse that delivers breathtaking imagery, specifically in HDR. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. Now compared to the LG G5, which one should you buy? If you are looking for a brighter TV and a TV that has a proper support for HDIG, then go with the LG G5. And if you are looking for a TV with a higher color vibrancy, higher color brightness in HDR and a much better dynamic tone mapping, then go with the Samsung S95F. And that's it for today's video. If you found it useful, give it a like, share it with your friend, and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.